Right then, we are live, I think. Yes. Hello, welcome to Darkroom Chat. It's Sunday, we're on 21st of June. Here with myself in Coventry and with Dan over in Hong Kong. Hello, Dan.
Hey, John.
How are you doing today?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. All good.
All right, good. So it's
Everything
Father's
okay?
Day,
Yay! Woo!
and we're both hiding from the family.
Yeah.
Did
I
you
had
see
my-
the eclipse?
I don't think we had one here.
It might have been partial where you are.
Yeah.
We had a fairly good eclipse, and it wasn't one of these perfect, with the perfect ones where the moon perfectly passes the sun and leaves that lovely ring of fire around. But
Right.
I mean, it was off by a couple of degrees. Well, not even a couple of degrees. It was off by a tiny sliver. So we got a kind of crescent moon kind of shaped sun.
Did you get any photos?
Yes and no. I had planned something. I had a location. I had the camera, the film, a timer for the intervalometer, and I'd worked it all out. And last night, I was kind of overcome with too much stuff to do, and I just thought to myself, do I really, really want to do that? I mean, setting up something. It's a one-shot deal. It's 4 hours, right? From when it slowly begins to cross the disk to like 2 hours in, it's straight on, and another 2 hours it's coming off. So it's 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Do I really want to spend 4 hours of my Sunday standing on a mountaintop with a camera, and then inevitably I'm going to make some goof and it won't be right? I had figured it all out, but I thought better. So instead I said, okay, I'm going to take one photograph. And if you're doing any kind of astro stuff, photographs of the moon, photographs of the sun, it always makes sense to use digital, unless because of the exposures. If you get it wrong, you just shoot it again, and you don't go back to the lab and then develop a roll of dead film, with nothing on it, nothing to show. So, okay, but I don't have any digital cameras, or at least I don't. I have like a couple, and they're not really great. But I have an A7R II, a Sony. So okay, I'm gonna take the Sony and I'll get a 500mm reflector lens. And then of course it dawned on me that I can't stack enough filters not to burn out my sensor.
Yeah.
So okay, so then I'm rushing around, and I found it somewhere in the stores an old Tokina MD mount lens. Now that's no problem because it's all going to be infinity.
Yeah.
And so I got this reflector lens, and it's not here right now, but it's just small enough that I can fit 2 filters around it on the front.
Just quickly, what's a reflector lens?
It's like a telescope where you have the light bouncing off the back and then bouncing back to the front and back to the lens. So it's basically using mirrors instead of refractive optics.
Okay.
Right.
And that enables you to have a longer focal length.
It allows me to have a 500mm full frame in something that weighs like less than a can of Coke and is only slightly bigger.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So it's about the size of it's smaller than a coffee can, in fact. And that also means that I can actually put put filters in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's lightweight, it's small, it's great. Because I'm focusing on the sun, I'm not going to have any funny little donut bokeh. It'll be quite a nice shot. All right. Okay. The next problem is, somehow I've put all of my next mount adapters in the same place, the same carefully planned, super safe place, which I have no idea where it is. And I must have at least 3 stashes of next adapters. So, all right, okay, Now, at this point, the eclipse is already starting, and I've shopped everywhere I can in one shot, and everywhere's closed. And so I get in the car and I drive all across town, and I finally get to Shamsho, which is a kind of famous place for buying electronic stuff. And the only place I'm dead sure that on a Sunday I can get the adapters I need. So I'm in the store, and then we find out it's not an actual normal MD mount. so we've got the guys who are running around trying to find strange adapters to put filters on my camera, on my lens, and other guys who are actually actively modding. They're filing away existing mounts to make them fit. And I'm counting down the time. I'm like, okay, we have 18 minutes left, and the guy's like filing faster. It's hilarious. Eventually, I get out. I take 2 or 3 shots, and because I'm not doing a sequence, those 2 or 3 shots at that exact precise 4:08 p.m. were, I mean, that's it, right? Job done. But behind me, I'm looking around, and there's a whole bunch of other photographers who gathered behind me because I've got the biggest lens and I've got a tripod. So I'm in the middle of a crowded street, and then the whole bunch of other photographers with gear have gathered around me, thinking that I've got the best spot, and I haven't. I'm in the middle of a street with high rises going up, right? It's because it's the closest place to where I'm getting the lenses modded, right? So next, then a whole bunch of like kids and ordinary people they're pulling out their phones and trying to photograph the sun with their phones. I was like, no, don't do that. And there's little children staring at the sun. So I'm like, okay, so I stopped what I was doing, and I had lots of stacked ND filters and things. So I'm handing them out to all these people on the street, saying, please, for the love of sensors and eyeballs, right, use the filter, because only a complete idiot can stare at the sun unprotected, right? You're going to lose something. So, but it's great because if you actually stare at an eclipse, a solar eclipse, you just can't see anything unless you have a filter.
Yeah.
Right. But when you have a filter, you can absolutely see the crescent. You can absolutely, and if it was a perfect eclipse, you would see the ring of fire. So I reckon I must have had at least 40 people using my filters. And at one point, I was standing there with a 100 by 100 millimeter filter, just holding it up in the street, and a queue of people were coming up, looking at the filter, going, "Ooh, oh yeah," and then moving on. And the next guy would come up, and for about 3 to 5 seconds, he would go, "Oh yeah, I can see it," and then he would move on. And
you should have a little like donations box next to you.
No, but I mean, it was great. I mean, the thing was, it's like you couldn't see it without the filter, and people were busily burning their retinas and sensors, and it did a good job. And the funny thing is, I got every single filter back at the end of it.
Wow,
there's not one
great.
thing missing. Which, I mean, some of these filters are like £100, right, for a really nice Nissi ND1000.
Okay.
But it's good. It just shows people's honesty, and they just really want to see the eclipse.
Well, that's great. It's great that you're able to assist people to do it safely, because it's one of those things that I think
is it ends, unlike an event or something. So there's like 5 minutes or so where everyone's going frantic, and then it's over. Right, and you get all your kit back, and everyone leaves, and it's nicely put away.
So, did you take any photos while the eclipse was happening, or was all your equipment just?
I got like 3, but they're super duper unimpressive, and all you really, because it's not like a perfect concentric, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only when it's perfectly concentric do you get that kind of like coronal ring of fire. So essentially, I got like 3 pictures, which basically looks like a crescent moon.
Hold on, you had, was it a 500mm lens?
I was using a 500 f8, and I think to really fill the full frame, you would need about 2,000 millimeters.
Right.
Equivalent.
So how much? Yeah. that was my question. Was like, how much of the frame does 500mm fill?
Well, the moon fills about the same number of arc seconds or whatever angle of arc as the sun. That's why you have eclipses.
Yeah.
And that's about 2,000 millimeters. About.
Okay.
Fill top to bottom of the frame.
Right. Okay.
Right. So I wouldn't. You're never going to be doing it with like large format.
No, right. And you'd need a really sturdy tripod, wouldn't you? Because, if you're using a
500
focal length that long, like the Earth's movement's going to come into play as well.
I don't want to have a really big. Well, no, I was shooting at about thousandths of a second, 250th to 1,000th of a second on a tripod, and it was a fairly sturdy tripod. So I'm not worried about movement. I'm certainly not worried about movement of the sun in that time, because the sun traverses its own disk approximately in 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm talking about tiny fractions of the time.
Yeah.
It's a good photographic invention. I honestly think, although I don't have a lot to show for it, I think we had so much more fun than I was planning to have. Just all these little kids. In fact, I think there was one child who came around 3 times, and I've seen you before. She goes, just give me the filter. It was great.
That's great. Yeah, that is really good.
And everyone had a great. Put the crazy red light on.
Yeah,
Point.
Yeah, it's streaming now. It's really slow and jerky for some reason. It's something to do with running Skype, capturing the video from Skype, and then that going out and streaming that out. It just makes my computer slow down loads.
Can we reduce Skype?
It's fine. You don't have any control in Skype over the quality.
We could always do Zoom another time.
Yeah, I think.
Something else.
Yeah, we'll give Zoom a go at some point.
Or Google, whatever. I don't even know what Google uses, but there's lots of different options.
Yeah, I think Google have just released their video chat for free, haven't they? It was like a paid thing before, but now it's free. But yeah, it's running. It's just a bit jerky today. That's all right.
So what are you going to do today?
I don't really know. I've been working on these. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah. That's good.
And I want to do a couple more of those because there's a local gallery that's looking for submissions, self-portrait submissions for an exhibition they're going to have when lockdown's over. So I just want to get a final one of these that I'm really happy with that I've got to submit. So I'll work on that for a bit. And then I don't really know. I was contemplating digging out a couple of old negatives because I've got a couple of prints on my wall that I did about 4 years ago, and they just kind of sit there and I never really you don't notice them when something's like on the wall for a long time. You don't look at it anymore. But I kind of noticed them this week and thought, I think I can do a better. Well, I know I can do a better job of printing it now because it was it was like 4 years ago. So hopefully, I just kind of want to dig that out and see how I would approach printing it now compared to how I did then. But yeah, I'll see. I'm just going to carry on with this for the time being. What are you working on today? What have you got?
Well, I was. I think primarily what I was going to do is I was going to print a couple of photographs I did on 4x5 of my son. And I was experimenting a bit, and they're not wonderful negatives, but I was going to show how I can do a black border around the frame, and I'll do that by double exposing it to light with a mask. And another thing I was thinking of doing was doing some more creative masks, but I'm not talking about like lovely pin registered negatives because that would take too long to work on. I was thinking about other techniques, like for example, just using masking tape to lay down masking tape on it.
Yeah.
or masking tape on a transparency. So that would also work. And I was thinking about doing things like, sometimes in cartoon strips, if you want to show action, you can show movement coming towards the reader or the viewer by, for example, if you break the boundaries of the frame by just slightly projecting outside of that black frame. It gives you the illusion of, it's a bit cliche, but it gives the illusion of, breaking out of the frame and out of the box. So that actually is, it's hard to do really well, but it's very easy to bodge. Right? You can just use a bit of masking tape and stick it over where the hand was or whatever it was.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to do. But in order to do that, I'm going to have a box. So
So like, if you were to have like the image I've got in my head is like a foot poking out over the edge of the frame of like somebody running, and their foot and their hands like that. What are you going to do? Just create a mask that then creates like a perfect edge, apart from.
Actually, I'm not even going to do a perfect edge. I mean, there are a couple of ways of doing it. One is that you can have a fairly diffuse edge. You could dodge it, or you could just work out where that hand is in the projection, and I could do something like first I will expose my regular image, the basic image, but I can do things like if I could put a transparency down, I can stick some black masking tape, some gaffer tape over that spot, cut to the shape I want, or indeed I could print one, right? But I can do one to the exact shape that I want, and when I do my masked black frame, that'll be just a part of that border that doesn't get exposed, and it'll be white, but first of all, I was going to cut and explain how I do my black borders. It's fairly straightforward, isn't it? It's
let me just put you full screen if you're going to do this now,
sure.
just to there we go.
Well,
you have
I'll
the
tilt it down a bit. So, first of all, I have an easel, and one little innovation I'm trying this time is I have some foam down on. It's just craft foam, and I've used some double-sided tape in a couple of strips just to lay that down on my base. And the reason I'm doing that is, if I'm trying to hit the same spot every time, it really doesn't help if that easel is sliding around on my base. And a little bit of foam I can still move it around, but this kind of tap won't knock it 2 or 3 millimeters out of the right area.
I have the same problem. Sometimes I put like a book behind the easel. Like if I put a heavy book behind it, because when you lift those flaps up, it's very easy to push it, isn't it? It's very easy to move it.
Likewise, I have a bit of wood with 2 brackets on each end, and a screw which I can tighten down if I want.
Yeah.
And so I would normally use that to register the back of it, and if I put a little squeeze clamp on the side here, I have a corner that I can use to register the location. Yeah, but I'm not doing that today. A little bit of explanation is this easel is a little easier to demonstrate on, and I just tend to do experiments and demonstrations with 8x10 because it's cheap and I can just burn through it. But this is an 8x10 easel, and like most easels, it has a couple of notches that stuck up here where I can guarantee to get the paper in the same spot every time. And this is an illustration, if you can see it. I don't know if you can see it. I just ran a pen around the edge of some regular 8x10, and you can see it leaves about a 7 or 8 millimeter white border around the edge. it's very hard to print right to the edge of a piece of paper, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you have to figure out a way to keep it flat. So almost all easels will shade a few millimeters of each side. And one nice thing
Have you
about
ever
an 8x10
seen
easel.
have you seen vacuum
Yeah.
eeasels?
Oh yeah.
I remember looking at those a while ago. They're pretty expensive,
Yeah.
but
Everyone's
you can
looked at them. There's a couple of interesting things that you can think about. Like, I found these boards. I mean, these are like for hanging things off, right?
Yeah.
On the wall, or there's a white side and a wooden side. But you can use these things and rig up a vacuum underneath them, especially if you have a larger board, and that will stick paper to it. The thing is, whenever someone designs a vacuum easel, they always make the easel too big. Because they said, "Oh, I want to do up to really big prints, and that's why I want my vacuum easel." But when you use an easel that's too big for the paper, you need to block off most of those holes. So you either need a complicated system with being able to turn holes off, or just lay paper down where your paper isn't.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a little bit restrictive. So, for example, if you have like this A4 size here, you will always need to block off some of the holes.
What about those massive LED panels that are used at concerts and stuff? You could have a system like that where you could turn on and off each individual section, couldn't you? Because they can be controlled, put on a per panel basis.
You're turning off vacuum, not not light. Right?
Oh yeah, each panel would have to have its own sucker on it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and you wouldn't want it lit because that'll ruin your print. So no, I've thought about it. In fact, I have a few of these boards, and I was going to use these boards as a way of locating an easel. But in the end, I realized that a bit of foam or a non-slip pad would do the job. So
yeah.
So there's no point doing too much work. Yeah. So a bit of explanation. I'll be doing some prints in a minute. But to explain, a double exposure in the darkroom is the opposite of a double exposure when you're taking a photograph on film. Because a double exposure on film is you are putting light onto shadow, right? So if you want to take a picture, a double exposure, you might want to look for something with an area of central darkness, and so maybe some pretty patterns on the outside. And so when you do your double exposure, you will end up putting the light that is reflected back on top of that dark area. And that's how it works. However, in the darkroom, as you know, John, it's the opposite way around. You're working in negative, but you are putting darkness onto white paper. So it's the opposite. So, of course, for people who haven't done this before, when I can expose something and take it all the way to the edge of the easel, but then when I do my second exposure for with all but the edges masked off, then if I just do it doesn't need to be accurate, a fairly long exposure, and I'll just get pure blacks, and that black will cover up, like almost as if it was a marker, paint marker. It will cover up whatever I had down there, right? So it'll
just a quick question: when you do your borders like that and you're exposing onto the top, do you just turn the light on, or do you use the enlarger to expose the additional light for the border?
I use the enlarger. Now, it doesn't actually much matter, except for I will use magnets to hold down the card.
Mm-hmm.
But always there's a little light bleed if you come at it from an angle.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
if you're going to go and turn on like overhead lights and something or whatever, then it makes sense to actually having locked down the mask on the easel to try to get the light to fall from above.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or you could hold a light underneath this and then expose it. I've got a little USB light I can just shine down if I wish to, and not use the enlarger. But if you, because I've had a flashlight before, and I've shone the light like over here or at the side and try to get it all around, and I end up with a bit of light bleeding on under the edge.
I've had that problem as well. That's why I asked. And yeah, as long as you hold the torch above, it was okay. But as soon as you start to come in at an angle, any small gap there creeps under, doesn't it? Yeah.
And likewise, if your card is too thick, right? If it's too thin, it tends to curl in some places. But if it's too thick, then you start to leave strange little shadows.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a happy medium. I think this is like a 3mm card. It's got some shape to it. I mean, some stiffness to it, but it's not enough to cause a problem. Right. Well, I'll just get working in a minute without too much talking. But everyone's got a different method to keeping their mask in the right place, because it's supposed to be centered. Right. So what I do is I'll get things like, well, I won't use these magnets, but because they're a bit too heavy. But once I have it in place, I just drop a magnet on it, especially in the middle, because these cards tend to curl like that, and it's rock solid. Actually, this is not a bad magnet, but this is a huge ND magnet and a metal easel.
Yeah.
So it'll lock it in place. So the technique that I use, may as well turn the light on. But anyway, the technique that I use is I cut a precise amount of each size, so that I have another piece of card that is exactly half of this distance here. So if this card is in the way in any between the edge of the easel and my mask, then it'll definitely be exactly centered to within a 1/10 of a millimeter. Right, and you're dealing in kind of millimeter sizes here. So I think this is a 6.7mm border, and if I put it above or below, it'll be precisely 6.7mm from the edge on both sides. In fact, that is already precisely centered. You can see.
Easy. So how do you cut the piece of card?
I have. Well, you can use a knife, but you may not get a straight edge. So all of my paper cutting in the darkroom, and I'll move the camera over, is done on my cutting table here, and I have a. This is a Carl brand circle cutter. Disc cutter. It has a disc blade in it, and it clamps down. I can get a nice straight edge. And also, one interesting or useful technique I have is, if I get a set of vernier calipers and I want to mark off a precise distance, which I'm not here, but I'll just demonstrate. I can set hang on. Spare piece here. I can set it so that I can touch both sides and know that I have precisely that distance on both sides. poking this out a bit. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's that side. Lock that down, that's that side. And I clamp it down, and I can get an actually parallel and well-measured width of card or whatever material I have.
I suppose once you've got them cut, you don't need to do it again, do you?
No, because
as long as you've done it accurately.
And then what I'll do is I will tape this with a bit of masking tape. I'll tape this to the board, and I'll make a note of which easel it is.
Yeah.
Or whatever the easels. If I'm using an adjustable easel, I'll put down the adjustments on it, the measurements, how many millimeters it is, and then I'll know that's always going to be good for that size of paper.
Yeah.
Right, and I'll have exactly the same borders every time. Yeah. Anyway, so either you tell us what you're going to be doing, or we just get on with it and let people watch.
Yeah, let's get on. I'm just going to carry on doing some of these weird painting fix onto the print before it's exposed experiments.
Hey, behind you, I see you have 5 trays.
Oh yeah,
well, 6 trays. 6 trays. But there's a tray in a tray in a tray, whatever. Can you explain what you're doing there?
The big tray I'm using just to keep liquids off this ply, because they just soak in and stain it. So the big tray is just from a garden centre, and then I'll just put my smaller trays in it. And I haven't actually got anything in these trays at the moment.
Do you have a separate sink?
Yeah, I've got a sink that's down the back of the shed.
Too far away.
But, yeah, I've got this set up like this just so the cameras can see everything a lot easier.
Yeah.
And when I do workshops, I have it set up like this as well, because it just means people can see what's going on. It's a lot more interesting.
So you have four sub trays, right?
Yeah. So the setup I've got at the moment is that these ones haven't got anything in, but I was doing some warm tone developer experiments. So I had a warm tone developer in one and the standard developer in the other, and then a stop, wash, stop, and then fixer, and then a bigger wash tray here.
How do you do? Do you ever do wash aid? Like
no.
PCA?
No.
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 And do you use flow?
For film, yeah.
Only for film.
Yeah, like as a wetting agent.
Yeah.
Yeah, only for film, not for paper. Do you use it for paper?
I have been doing, not always.
Right.
But if I find I'm getting streaks, drying streaks and things, then definitely will.
I've never had drying streaks on paper. I assume it's what sort of water type you've got, isn't it, and how quickly they dry.
Yeah. We have a filter, but we don't have any kind of it's not softener or hardener. I don't know what it is, whether it's supposed to be soft or hard water. But I can't change the quality of my water, only remove impurities.
Yeah.
And also sometimes humidity is a bit of a thing in Hong Kong. We have, I think, ordinarily about 80% humidity, and sometimes higher, which basically means it doesn't, things don't dry out. If you have an aircon on, it's better. But then I have this unit behind, which is a big box with it's actually got a shower in it, but I have a dehumidifier in there, and that's essentially my drying cabinet behind here. And I have and that one right now is at about 36% humidity, so that'll dry things out pretty quick. And I haven't quite figured out why sometimes I get drying streaks and sometimes I don't.
Do different papers react differently to that? I don't really know.
There shouldn't really be, because when I do fiber print, we leave them on big muslin meshes like this,
Yeah.
and we dry them that way up. So if that doesn't give you a drying, water streak, I don't know what would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I fully admit this is ignorance on my part.
Well, yeah, same here. I think because I've never experienced it, I've never had to look into it. Like I've seen it noted down a couple of places, but
that's a good thing about being an enthusiast darkroom guy or photographer. You don't need to pretend that you're the all-knowing expert. I don't make my living by giving tutorials and printing other people's work. So I can just say, look, I have no clue, but
I do. But the thing is, like, you can't know everything, can you? Yeah,
well, I definitely can't.
And everyone's constantly learning, and it's stupid to pretend or think that you know everything. I think so.
I think most people who say they know everything either, they're just really old hands, right? And they genuinely do know everything.
Yeah.
Or they're making it up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be found out to be one of those guys who's making it up.
Well, I think when you can kind of take rough guesses at things when you've got a fair amount of experience, because you kind of understand what's going on, don't you? But I think actual kind of experience of every situation, unless you've been doing it for decades, is very rare. Right, I'm going to crack on and do some printing.
Yeah, go on.
Right, so just to let you know, camera-wise, let's just see what we've got here. I'm trying to set it up so we're both... I've split the screen in two today. So I'll put everything in the middle of your camera is on screen.
Okay. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your enlarger is right in the middle of your display at the moment. Okay?
Right.
And now I'm going to step away from the computer and start doing some printing.
I'm going to look at, point down.
You mentioned earlier about saying how dark a darkroom needs to be.
Oh, yeah.
Or not. I was doing a print earlier, and I think same as you, I've got like a red filter gel over my computer screen.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
It fell off while I was I had a piece of paper out, and it didn't affect the exposure at all. And it was off for a good 2 or 3 seconds. I was like, what? Why hasn't that ruined it? But it didn't.
I think pretty much every time we talk, I harp on about darkroom, lack of necessity for darkroom.
Yeah.
But if you think about how bright the enlarger is when you're working on it, my standard level of lighting is around about, I don't know, well, on an f8 I would say it's probably going to be like f22. But the level of brightness of the light on the paper is just enough so that with my eyes I can make out the detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without obviously the red filter, and just as unfiltered, I can see the detail, and so it's quite not very bright. But by comparison, I'm doing I'm doing like a 20-second exposure, or maybe sometimes a 40-second exposure. So I figure that if any light falling on that paper is at a tiny fraction of my exposure level, it's not going to make any difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's relative, isn't it?
Yeah, and when I pre-flash, it's so bright, it would scare people. When I first started doing this, I was like terrified about mobile phones going off in the darkroom. Like, screaming, "No, no, turn the phone off!" Right, and now I realize it doesn't make any difference.
I think like with a mobile phone, it depends. I might do a test for that in a second. Actually, I assume it depends on how close the mobile phone is to the paper.
Yeah.
Because if you were to put a mobile phone on top of a piece of paper,
you can make a contact print.
Yeah.
Not very sharp one, but you can make a contact print. Another problem I've actually had was I had a red flashlight, which I thought. I mean, I checked the wavelength, and the wavelength was safe. It was right in the safe area, but I didn't quite realize how much light it put out. And I was using this flashlight thinking it was safe, and it was not. It was nowhere near safe. you could actually see it burning the paper. It was, Anyway, I'm gonna get on.
I've got a little red flashlight that I use as well, but I generally just use it so I'm not constantly turning the lights on and off. It's just nicer on the eyes because it does fog the paper. Right.
So demo wise, which one am I going to use? It's not going to be a good picture because the only one where I could get him clear enough, he was seated. My son was seated.
Oh, did I see that you received the Chroma Carbon Adventurer?
Ah, yeah. Fantastic.
Nice. How are you getting on with it?
I've had only one problem with it, and it's debatable about whether it was my cack-handedness or a manufacturing oversight, but I managed to unscrew the focus knob off the back.
Right.
It's got an Intrepid Mark IV style rear focus knob. Yeah. And
which is incredibly useful. I love that as a feature.
Yes, it's nice. But my goof was I couldn't figure out why it wasn't focusing, and what I was just doing is unscrewing the knob from the camera.
Right.
But I spoke to Steve, and he goes, well, they're epoxied in, and if you don't go past the stop, it'll be fine. But I would like him to put some kind of lock nut on it, maybe from the later versions, but that's up to him.
Yeah. That's a tricky
other
one.
Than that, I must say, you've got a Carbon Adventurer too, right?
No, I've got like the first version.
Oh well, you've got his work anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have an Intrepid as well?
I've got an Intrepid 8x10. Right.
They're different beasts, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I don't know how to describe. Like the 8x10 was like their first Kickstarter version of the 8x10. So it's. Yeah. I was chatting to somebody about this yesterday, actually. It's very flimsy, and particularly like for an 8x10, like it's big. So when it's flimsy, I feel like it's going to break, but it's cheap. It's a very cheap way of getting an 8x10 camera. So fair play to that. Yeah. But the Chroma's like I love it. It's solid. Like I've chucked it around in my backpack and everything's been absolutely fine with it.
The thing about the Intrepid is that they built a lot of bendiness into it, and I'm not so much worried about. Well, actually, yeah, there are parts of the Intrepid that break quite easily, like the spring clips on the back. Right. 3D printed spring clips, but also, but the general thing about the Intrepid is, and this is not a good example because this is one I made, but on an Intrepid base, but they are a bit bendy, and I'm not too keen on bendy cameras, because it means that careful adjustment you just made, is kind of plus or minus quite a lot.
Well, yeah, like for the 8x10, it's not a precision like camera at all. Like I've got this huge 300mm lens that when I put on the front of it, I feel like it might actually like fall off, which is not what you want with a massive lens. But I don't know. It's it was a good introduction to me. Like it made me realise I didn't want to do any more 8x10. Let's put it that way. I'm happy at staying at that. So.
I mean, 4x5 and 8x10, it makes sense if you try to do any like darkroom work. If you're actually trying to work with the negative.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. The negatives are amazing, and the few times that I have produced images with it, I'm really happy. Just because the process it's so cool to work with.
Yeah.
But 4x5 is maybe it is the camera as well. Maybe it is the fact that I actually kind of really enjoy using the chroma, and it just feels a lot. Like, so you've got an Intrepid 4x5, is that right?
Yeah, I have 1.5 Intrepid 4x5s.
Right.
I bought it secondhand, and I originally bought a Mark III. But I like the Mark IV's different focus method. Because the Mark III has a knob on either side, and there's a lock nut and a rack and pinion, right? And sometimes it clashes and it skips, and it's just not a smooth focusing method with a nice lockdown. It's good enough for an enlarger, but it's not really good enough for taking photographs.
Yeah.
So,
what sort of environments are you using large format in? What sort of like photography are you using it for?
Well, these cameras I'm using for mostly. I mean, everything I do with these cameras is on the tripod. Mm-hmm. But I will use things like the Cambo Wide handheld. I'll use my own camera handheld, the one I designed.
But like, are you doing like portraits, like landscapes with them?
Some of each.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, portraits. I'm not going to be messing around with a lot of movements, right?
Yeah. Well, that's like I've done a bit of landscape 4x5, and even then I didn't do a huge amount of movements. So I was never that bothered by having like a super technical camera. And I think the Chrome is like a good balance for that regards, having enough control. Like with the Intrepid 8x10, that you can't do small movements on it, just because as soon as you do something with it, it then kind of springs back into place, or into a different place.
Chroma?
No, the Intrepid 8x10.
Yeah. The concept of the Intrepid is great. They figured out that using marine ply and like a handheld router or whatever, maybe CNC router, but they could make things really cheap.
Yeah.
But I like the way Steve has done his balance.
Yeah, I could imagine like the chromas are quite a pain, like time consuming to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think both of them are good value for money.
Yeah.
It's all a question of how much money do you want to spend? How much is worth spending?
Yeah.
Because it's actually not a good. It's a false economy to buy a camera that just because it's a little bit cheaper, but it ends up you end up having to buy a whole new set.
Yeah. Well, that's the same for a lot of photography, isn't it?
for life.
Yeah, it's for life.
Well, the brilliant thing about the Intrepid I bought is the enlarger head that is a kit, and that is great. I couldn't think of a better way to do it. And that's too small. And I used the base that I had spare to make this enlarger.
I think they were due to announce an 8x10 enlarger.
Who was?
Intrepid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm sure I read something about that somewhere.
I will learn from your experience to not use 8x10. I am not ready for it.
I will get it back out at some point and I'll go with it.
Okay.
So here's a question for you. If you're masking, kind of connected to what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So the borders that you've got, say, how would you create a border that had a straight black line on the inside of the border and then an almost painted effect on the outside? Like a rough edge on the outside of the border.
Does it need to be reproducible?
No, yeah, it's a unique.
In which case, I would expose it like I'm doing now, except I would probably lift the edge of lift the easel cover, the border, so that I go all the way to the edge on my second exposure.
Yeah.
Right. So I've now got. For example, just as a, right. Let's say this is nicely centered when it's not, but let's say it's centered. And I would do my second exposure with just a white light source. I'd go to the edge, and then I would put I would do my developer all over it except for the edge, and then paint towards the edge.
Right.
Yeah.
Manually paint the edge.
Manually paint the edge.
Yeah.
If I wanted it reproducible, I would do the same thing with a negative mask. So I'd actually achieve something like that in some other way, then photograph that and project that on its light. Yeah.
Okay.
With proper some kind of proper pin registration system, maybe, I don't know, to get it exactly right.
Yeah.
I think there's two kinds of photography, right? Oh, two kinds of darkroom work. There's a kind of professional way where you're trying to get it same every time, and you've got proper methods. And then there's the other way, which is it sounds like I'm like making excuses for being cack-handed, but I don't think artists always work in precise ways. There has to be some art to it, as opposed to craftsmanship.
Yeah,
partly why I prefer carving to carpentry. I don't necessarily want a straight edge.
Yeah. I'm trying, personally, I'm getting my head around that myself, regards what I produce and who I am. I am quite a technical person, so I've always kind of gone down the route of doing things right and trying to get things perfect, as it were. and now I'm trying to not be like that.
I can see, because you're doing your cleverness, right?
Well, and
You're painting on the.
It's fun. it's so much fun. Like I haven't burnt through this much paper since when I first started doing printing, and I was learning the whole process. Because now I'm just experimenting for kind of just small variations based on almost like brush strokes, as opposed to whether I've got the exposure right.
My aunt does ceramics.
Yeah.
And it's the difference between an IKEA mug and something that's just human, and you could almost feel that mug having been in her hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're in a factory, you want to make 100,000 mugs the same, then you do it one way. Yeah, and that's nice and professional and all.
I think that the ultimate goal for me is to produce something that is a combination of both.
Yeah.
If you have something that's kind of, it really shines because of what's going on technically, but also has a really kind of human element built into the outcome as well. I think that's.
Well, the wow factor comes from people going, "Oh, how did you do that? I could never have done that," right?
Yeah.
So you need some of that wow factor, but that wow factor there's two different kinds. One is like, oh, that's technically perfect, but the other kind of wow factor is like, oh, that's just talent, right?
Yeah.
For technical people like ourselves, I think I kind of find the technical side, when people do things that are more technical, I tend to find that quite inspiring, because I think, oh, I could do that, and I can use that technique, and but sometimes you see someone just doing something very organic and very, something that comes from the heart and from experience and technique, and it's not so much a learned technique, but a experiential technique, like Michael Jackson, his luminograms. You can't just pull that off by following a book.
They are absolutely stunning, they are, aren't they?
Yeah.
But that's a great example, actually, I think, of what I'm trying to say is it's a superb combination of a real kind of technical element to it, and then an artistic, creative flair in it as well, and a meaning and a purpose behind why he's using that technique.
I think for him, the technique is just the medium of expression. And each image is partly intuitive and just comes from in the moment, and partly it's planned. But it's something that people think, oh yeah, that's not too hard. But then you think about it, and there's no way that you could pull off anything like that unless you had, talent and years of practice.
Yeah. How are you getting on with your masking?
Just done a test strip. Not sure what you can see. How much can people see here? No, not a lot. Yeah, so 5, 10, 50. Gee. 20 seconds-ish. You know, I've been wondering about all this popularizing of photography.
The popularization of photography. It's a bit late to think about that, isn't it?
Darkroom work anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to just pure film photography, which is, I think film photography is very accessible, and I think darkroom is a step too far from most people. So I was always hoping that we get more and more people involved in darkrooms, but I have to accept that, you know, that maybe is not going to happen.
There are lots of factors to start darkroom printing. No matter how easy you kind of tell people it is, you still need that more of a commitment to it, I think, than being able to pick up a camera and load some film into it.
Yeah. What am I going to do? And maybe that's a good thing. Well, it's a thing anyway, but maybe it's a good thing because filter have I got in here? Maybe what it means is we will always have a bit of a cachet left.
Yeah. There must be some stats somewhere of like percentage of people that kind of maybe move on to darkroom printing after trying film printing. Like in the modern day, I assume those figures were a lot higher years ago.
You know, I've gone and messed up my my test strip timing because I didn't put a filter in. So now I've just chucked a filter in and added about 7 seconds on a 20-second exposure.
Oh no.
Or 3.5. Oh no. So it's only 8x10. What am I doing? I shouldn't have done that. Oh, whatever.
I think community dark rooms are possibly the future, regards getting more people into it.
Yeah.
But they've got to be easily accessible, like time-wise, cost-wise, all that sort of stuff.
In Hong Kong, it's a few $100 or like equivalent, a few tens of pounds an hour, because no one has any space.
Yeah.
Right? Space is a premium here. So to make any kind of profit on something that's seldom used and that has equipment and technical staff, you're going to need to charge a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to just get a flashlight because if I would do it properly, I should take the what do you call it out? Yeah, why don't I just do that? I'll take the negative out.
Are you having issues?
No, I was second guessing myself. And let's see. Let's do it like this: 1 100, 2 100, 3 100, 4 100, 5 100. I'll do. I should take the filter out, of course, when I do that, but who cares? So.
Do you know somebody called Mayank Gandhi?
Yep. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine from India.
He just popped into the chat and said hello.
Mayank and I are the guys who are working on that the app.
Oh, superb.
I have no signal from you.
Yeah, my battery just died on my camera. Oh no! What's going on?
That's weird. That is very weird.
Back.
I'm gonna bring the tripod over here to show you quite how weird this is. Right. Somehow.
Hold on. Let me just make you full screen. There you go.
I've lost my son's hands. So I think the 27 seconds that I did the exposure, I should really give it a few more seconds. But those hands are completely missing, like they're severed or something. So I'm gonna do not the Ilford way. All right, is a lighter. 1, 2, 3. It's gone too grey now, I think, but. My drawer's closed. Give it 30 seconds. That's not 30 seconds, but who cares?
It'll be alright.
Yeah, I'm well under. But, yep, I have saved the hands at least. I just want to illustrate. Here's the problem. See, on this side here with the black edge.
Yeah.
I've got quite a significant amount of creep on the edge. So I should go back to multiple magnets. And
So
I
that's
need
where
to
the car's just raised up slightly and light's getting under it.
Yep, it's just bleeding under the edge. I'll be fitting that anyway, so there's no need to fix it. Or even wash it. Let's leave it there. All right.
Right.
That. So. Seconds. I'm kind of hoping that my app is going to be uploaded soon.
Have you worked out how to actually get it onto the Play Store then? Is that something you're aiming to do?
May has, yeah. In fact, I think going through all the administrative hoops is more of a technical challenge than writing these things.
Well, I look forward to trying
I remember
it out.
when I was in college, this goes back to like the very early 90s. I used to write similar apps for the Scion Series 3A. And that was a little organizer back in the day, and it had its own program language, and it was fun.
It's a whole other beast these days, though, isn't it? Because I used to write, I did some iPhone app development for a while, and
yeah,
I used to be a software engineer. I used to write computer games for like PlayStation, Xbox, and stuff.
That's good.
And it was like back in the day, it was. I don't want to say it was easy because there were a lot of technical challenges, but you had fixed hardware, you know, that was relatively simple to kind of access it all. But nowadays, like particularly mobile phones, there are so many variations. Like even like bloody iPhones, there's so many variations of them now.
Are you an iPhone user or a?
I'm Android.
Yeah, good. Because some people, well, a lot of photographers are iPhone users, and so I had people saying, "Oh, are you going to do an iPhone version?" Like, nope, you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
I'm always upset with things like, you know, the Lumu light meter and things. It was only for almost the entire time it was out. It was only available for iPhone. And you know, you say, "Oh, no, but I want one for Android." And they say, "Well, buy an iPhone." Like, oh, as if, you know. So now, the thing is, because this kind of thing, almost nobody is going to do. Very, very few people are going to download it. Very few people are going to want it, right? So, I guess I'm happy to have all the code listed listed out, and if anyone wants to copy it, you know, port it to their iPhone, go ahead.
You could put it on something like GitHub, just to almost make it open source. If you're up for that.
What May is doing.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I'm just trying to make it easier for people, but I'm not going to jump through serious hoops just to help somebody else do it. When you can, really what it does is it saves you about 10 minutes per exposure. You know, having turn things into negatives and flip them around. I mean, you can do all that in a simple photo editor.
What would make it really accessible is if, you know, was it Polaroid released something that you could put your phone on and exposed onto a Polaroid or an Instax or something.
Yeah.
If you could get something like that where you could slide in like some 5x7 darkroom paper and put your phone on top and make a print like that, I think that would be...
They have one already. Isn't that an actual product?
I don't know. If it is, sounds like a great idea to me.
In both systems, like with the Instax, you can definitely just print it, because there's essentially, it's like a reverse scanner, you know.
Oh yeah, sorry. I mean for darkroom printing, like using darkroom paper as opposed to Instax film.
Oh no! In fact, there was such a device, and it was offered, but they did a Kickstarter or a Indiegogo or something, and they did get enough funds, and they did deliver some, but not all, of the product.
Oh right.
And in fact, you can also get their app, which is, actually, I must say, it's more professionally, polished than ours. But then that also presumes that you're comfortable downloading someone's APK.
Yeah.
Right. Because they never bothered to put it on the Play Store.
Oh right. Do you have to? Is there a license fee to put stuff on the Play Store?
Well, I think you have to pay an initial amount of money to get registered as a developer.
Yeah.
And May can comment in the comments and set me straight if I make a misstatement.
Apparently, he's just messaged to say that the app is already uploaded.
Woo!
Nice one. Does that mean I can actually search for it and download it? Now,
you can
is
right
it
now.
live?
You can actually download it before I've downloaded it. You can be like the first download.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be able to use it on my enlarger, though, am I?
What's your enlarger?
It's the DeVere 504. I might be able to slide it in where the negative carrier goes.
Yeah. But you have yourself Chroma, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's not too hard to fit a light on top of that.
Oh yeah, I could do it with that, couldn't I?
You need to fit a light on top of that because the phone is the light, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just need to make a mask to go on the back of the camera.
Yeah. And I've done one with foam core. Yeah,
cool.
It takes all of 5 minutes. Here we go. So, where was I? Last time, I think I may have goofed because I did a 5-second exposure wide open, and I think that was actually way too much light. I've done it. So, slide this puppy out. Oh, God.
Right, let's go and wash these.
So let's do a 5-second exposure at f11. All right.
Do you know of any of the dark rooms in Hong Kong?
I know about 5 dark rooms in Hong Kong.
And are they all community ones, like open, or are they just private?
Well, I'm talking about community ones.
Yeah.
I know there's Image Playground, which I think fairly full featured. And obviously the favorite one would be Camera Film Photo.
Yeah.
And there's the Photocrafters, which are in Shangwan, so that's 3. And I think there are a couple more. I think there are a couple more community dark rooms that I don't go to. I would be surprised if Showa didn't have one as well. So I think there's more, and I think every couple of years there's like twice as many as before. You know, I mean, about 5 years ago there was only like 3, and there's more and more. Then again, there's also kind of like groups of friends, right?
Yeah.
You know, you get yourself into the in crowd, and then you can go and work with their dark rooms. But likewise with this place, I'm happy to let my friends borrow it. So so if you know, if you're a mate of my mate, and he's willing to vouch for you and watch over you,
Yeah.
then they're welcome to anyway. I think that's probably the better way. Although I'd like people like Camera Film Photo to get remunerated for their investment. You know, I'm just as happy to let people show up at my own darkroom. You know, just let in here by a friend, and they can print as much as they want. I mean, why not? It's only if you have, like, you know, expensive stuff and you're all set up to do some epic printing thing that you wouldn't want anyone touching your darkroom.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, I don't mind. And it's just occurred to me, although I've demonstrated the borders quite well. It has just occurred to me that the whole filtering thing I was doing when, you know, pumping up the contrast a bit was wrong, because if I want my son's hands to show up here and here and not lose shadow detail on his shirt, I should be looking for less contrast instead of more contrast.
I think your camera's pointing the wrong way.
What do you mean pointing the wrong way? Oh, can you not? Oh, sorry.
Can't
Can you
actually
see it now?
Yes. Just.
Yeah. So I will fish it out. Give it a bit of a rinse. Okay. So okay, I got really nice solid borders.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost straight. And I got no bleed anymore. Looks great. And but the thing is, if I'm going to do my son's hands here, coming out over this border, then I'm lacking a bit, because they're just too diffuse. And that's a bit of a regret, because I used a 4x5 instead of using 35mm. And on the day, that's the camera I was using, because I was basically testing the chroma. But even with a 90mm lens, and there's a limit to how much I could stock down because of how much light I had, and how long the poor boy could hold still for.
Yeah.
So so that limited my depth of field. And I don't have enough depth of field to give really sharp hands. It's really what I wanted. In fact, the hands... Anyway. So the point is, I'm going to have to... I'm going to adjust slightly. I'm going to reduce the contrast. I won't mess with the exposure, but then I will work on doing my my finger borders. All right, back over to you. Let me think.
Right, I've just washed my...
Okay, so I'm going to go from a 3.5 to maybe 1.5.
I'll just wash some prints.
I'm kind of learning as I go. I mean, the borders I've done a fair few borders myself before.
So have you got to reduce the border size on that print to get the hands over the edge of it more?
No. I wanted nice fat borders because I'm gonna expand the picture a little bit, right? Because it's only clipping a bit.
Yeah.
I wanted to get it almost to the very edge of this white.
So here's a question then. If you wanted to make on that size paper, say you wanted the border to be the same width but closer to, say it was just like round his head almost and everything else came outside that frame.
Good. Yeah.
How would you do that?
Well, firstly, I would just get a smaller piece of card that would cover that part that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And honestly, what I would do is I would okay. What I would let me explain first. I'll put some light on here so you can see a picture. Right. It helps if you can visualize it. Right. So let me turn this light off. Can you see the picture there?
No.
It's too dark?
It's too purple. There's no... Can't see the image.
Hold on. Let me turn the floodlight off. All right. And I'll
yeah, that's
this.
it.
In fact... All right, so I'm free-handing this.
Excellent.
Right.
Action cam.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would just get a piece of card, and I'll pretend with this negative here, right? And that's how I block off.
Yeah.
But I want to get it in the same place every time. In fact, maybe I'll do that this time. So I'll get a sheet of acetate, and I will lay the acetate down on top of a blank piece of non-exposed but previously fixed, paper, photographic paper. Mm-hmm. That's actually a very good tool to have around if you're gonna do that, do darkroom work. Is just get a piece of paper straight out of the bag and then and fix it because it's exactly the same thickness as a regular piece of paper. So yeah, I get something about this size. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I would also get a sheet of acetate, which I've got a sheet down here. In fact, it's not actually not acetate. This is I think polyester, because polyester is better for printing toner on, right? And I'll put that in the same location here. Yeah. Right. And so I've got paper and acetate on top of that, or overhead projector sheet, and then literally here I can just draw on that, or I can stick down some gaffer tape and draw on the outline of what I want to show through. Yeah. And if I want to do it smaller and have it more diffuse, as opposed to a hard edge, I can bring the whole enlarger down to make a smaller version of it.
Yeah.
and then when I expose, I could you know, have it on a stand. But I have a stand with a glass plate that allows me to do that, and that would give you a more diffuse edge.
Yeah.
But just for the sake of a demo, I don't even need to do that. I'll put some tape down. Yeah, why not? Have a go. Yeah, let's have a go.
Okay. I just wonder, like, because in the case you're doing it before, you're using the edge of the easel to create the outside edge of the frame, aren't you?
I'm using the edge of the easel for the outside of the frame, but this time I don't. I'm going to just go for it with some tape and maybe a pair of scissors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got some.
Do you know what? I'm actually going to have a go at doing a. You know, we were talking about the painted frame earlier. I'm going to have a go at doing that.
I'm just going to blind myself.
Could you turn your camera just to the left slightly?
Is that right?
Perfect. Yeah, it's just to get you in.
The sad thing is, right now, is it's just sitting on top of the laptop. It's not even on the tripod.
It's going to fall over, isn't it?
Another thing that I was thinking I can do just for effects and stuff, right? To turn this off. Another thing I can do is I have a black marker pen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know how if you mark on a piece of photographic paper with black marker.
Yeah.
And you know, it'll come out white. Similarly, I can draw on, or rather see-throughness onto this paper, onto this acetate. Yeah, maybe that's the way. That'd be fun.
7.
Actually, that's really... I've invented an entirely new way to screw up a photograph.
What have you done? Oh man. I've just screwed up my I was making a mask.
Yeah.
Oh, what's happened?
What, like a proper mask, like a negative mask using ortho?
No, no, I was just making one for the frame, and it's I put it back in. I turned it round in the cutter, but I turned it twice because I wasn't really thinking, and I ended up cutting the wrong side too short. What is going on here? There we go. Right, I need another bit of card. Right, so that needs to be.
This is going to be fun. Where's my pen? Hmm. So, John, have you been doing lots of tutorials and stuff? Teaching people how to do stuff?
What do you mean, like on YouTube or?
Yeah, YouTube.
In live? I've kind of just been doing streams when I've been experimenting with things. I'm not specifically making tutorial like videos. It's just kind of what I'm working on at the moment. I just end up kind of streaming a little demo of it. I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to make like highly polished things because it just, the setup time and the editing, I just don't want to dedicate my time to that. I'd rather put my time in kind of to my family and to actually kind of just doing, like creating things as opposed to creating YouTube videos. That makes sense. Like there's great.
I think there's a lot of
videos on
tutorials
YouTube
already
anyway,
out there, you know.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
And I think fame and fortune is not my it's not my goal. I don't think I've certainly never wanted to be well known.
No, I agree. I just like personally like this, like chatting with you now while doing stuff has been the best outcome of like me setting up the streaming stuff and like lockdown and everything. This is exactly why I wanted to do like start streaming, was just to kind of chat with people. And if other people get something out of it, then that's great.
Yeah.
It's a bonus.
Likewise, this is really not a podcasty kind of thing. It's not something that that necessarily, you log into for your daily commute.
No.
Because it kind of has questionable enduring value.
No, I had a quick look on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like now I've got an account set up and everything. You can't help but be kind of force-fed content that pops up.
Oh.
And there's this, I can't remember the guy's name, that makes Darkroom videos. And he'll do like a little tutorial, and he'll get like thousands of views, within days. So it shows that there are people out there that are interested in it, and looking.
Yeah. Interest in doing is different, isn't it?
It's what, sorry?
Being interested in something as a topic and wanting to do it is a different thing.
Yeah.
It's like skydiving. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I'd like to skydive, but then give them the opportunity and they kind of like back out.
I've done it once. I did it. Like you've done loads, haven't you?
I've done a fair bit, but how I started was literally like thinking, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that, and saying that, and then the two people that I was with that day went, all right then, this weekend, Saturday come up, Saturday you do your training, Sunday you jump. I was like, what? And there was some RAF element in it, so it wasn't super expensive, right?
Yeah.
And I had no excuse, and all my mates would see me, going, yeah, I would do that, and that's how I got involved. But
you did a solo jump after one day's training?
No, it's called static line.
Right.
And I struggled static line for about 16 jumps. It's just strange. Just getting your hips forward, you think is an easy thing to do, but if you're as physically uncoordinated as I am, then that didn't work very well. So then I went down to Spain, to Emporia Brava, and did what's called the accelerated free fall, which they chuck you out at 10,000 feet, but you've got a cameraman and two guys on either side of you holding you in the right direction and physically putting your body in the right position. Then it'll click, and it's like a lot of sports and a lot of hobbies. There's a moment of clicking, like you might explain to a photographer. It's about telling a story and about engaging your viewer, and you can tell them that 1,000 times, and they'll go yeah, and they'll never do it. But one day that the concept will click, and they'll be forever changed, right? So,
and they probably won't even know it's happened. They'll just be doing it.
When in skydiving, when you start falling right way up instead of upside down, it's pretty obvious that you've done something different and right. Oh, other way up. All right, so that's my mask. So yeah, let's have a go. Where's my mask? And a piece of plastic. Where's it gone? Oh, that's not it. That's not it. Ah, here it is. And well, this is going to be interesting because this is completely out. the new idea. In fact, it's your idea, or is it my idea? I can't remember. Our idea.
It's communal. It's a community darkroom.
It is indeed. All right, so back to F22. And then, how much time do we have on it? 40 seconds. Whatever. One way of figuring out if it's going to work or not is just to bang some paper onto it. Actually, why not? Oh, I've tried the MGRC. Ilford's
Oh,
new
the new
stuff.
one? Yeah. How'd you get on with it?
It's just like Burger, right? Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Burger's RC1, and it's almost exactly the same.
And you like that stuff, don't you?
And I like that stuff. So I would I buy whichever's cheaper. And I'm very happy because I do want to support Ilford, right? You know.
Yeah.
And I'm glad their new stuff is worthy of supporting.
I wonder why they introduced it. I think it's like a chemical supply thing, or
could be. Usually, if it's a chemical
legalities.
supply problem, it gets worse, right? It's like Polaroid originals versus the original Polaroid.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what makes me wonder, because it's like if they've tried to kind of future-proof the product for some reason.
But they actually make it better,
Yeah.
right?
But
it doesn't matter why, but you know, I'm all for it. Gordon Bennett. That is strange. But really strange. Because what's happening is I've reduced the filter grade, yeah, from a 3.5 to like a 1.5, and unless I've got the setting wrong, no, I mean the exposure has. It's almost a stop under. Bring it down to 33 and then up a notch. That's weird. You having fun tonight? What you doing?
Oh, I'm still painting. Still painting things on. I've actually just done like a combination of the two. I put a mask on it to try and create a hard edge, which you can't really see. However, in the process of doing that, I ended up with a look that I really liked. So I'm just trying it again.
Remember what I was talking about just now about maybe painting a some kind of acetate as a mask?
Yeah.
I don't think that's what you're after.
No, a while ago we were talking about changing the outside edge to be like a painted edge.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm going for at the moment.
I think you're going to need some really fat borders if you're going to do that.
Yeah, well, that's what I've done.
That's funny. I opened up the lenses stop and I dialed down the exposure time by a random amount, right?
Yeah.
Took 7 seconds off it, and I seem to have nailed the exposure. Now you know me. That's not a matter of skill.
That's it's good judgment. It's experience, isn't it? There's that.
Yeah.
Fuck
Right.
it.
Before I do that, I'm going to test my mask position. Yeah, right. That's good. So let's go do it.
Damn it.
Is my account still online?
The last message he wrote was
A while
you
ago.
can download it from here, and then didn't actually post the link.
Oh, well,
So
I will sort out the comment. Right, so now I've got my very funky mask. Oh my god, here we go. Let's try not to move this. This is so stupid, it's wonderful. I think I've made a mistake earlier on because I've partly occluded the print with a red filter. But at least I'll have something. Oh, that's fun. Uh-oh.
As it turned out.
Yeah, but I've got a little bit of detail missing here. Oh, that's funny. Okay, I'm going to do another one of them because it turned out, I wouldn't say well, but it turned out something-ish. I'm going to do... Oh, that's fun. I'm going to do a softer mask.
I'll come and have a look in a minute. I'm just in the middle.
Oh, if you're lazy like me, and to anyone listening, if you're lazy like me and you often don't use the tongs, do rinse your hands and dry them properly. Not so much for health and safety, but because you don't want to get fixture on your print.
The old fixer fingerprint.
Yeah. Fixer fingerprints are especially painful on large sheets of paper.
Yeah.
Green light off, pilot light on. Okay. All right, let's do something funky. Right, and pulley out the way, and 33 seconds. Do that. Let's look for a sheet of glass. Oh. That's the wrong button. No doubt that'll be my best shot of the day. That's funny. My best exposure just came from accidentally putting the enlarge on without a timer, turning off again at a literally random time. I am my own worst enemy.
Which is great if you only want to do one print, isn't it? And you can just walk away from that now.
Yes. All right, so I'm exposing. Okay. Now let's try something a bit crazy. I'm going to put a sheet of glass on it. See if I can.
I'm gonna have to stop working on this print. I've got like 20 prints of my face now. It's too much.
I have played with switching cameras and doing multiple camera setup.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's interesting. Now this one's
I like
offset
that.
because I put it on top of a sheet of glass. And obviously I didn't get the alignment quite right. But
I'm just going to make you full screen. So what have you been doing? So look.
no, I had another go, and I was just looking at. Wasn't really worried about the background exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I wanted to do was see about how fuzzy the outline would be, and honestly, raising the mask up quite a long way, about a centimeter,
Yeah.
doesn't seem to have made much difference at all to the hardness of the mask. Yeah, obviously the exposure, the background exposure is not huge.
Yeah.
But it's still quite a strong outline. It's been fun anyway. You want to keep going?
So can you just show me how you made that out the mask, because I didn't actually see that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can see over here, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, all I did is I got some sticky masking tape out, black masking tape, and just roughly tore out an outline.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, bit of fun, right? But what I was trying to do is I was experimenting to see whether or not a combination of tearing and cutting, and whether or not the outlines would be organic enough. And what I was finding was, it was fun this way. Can you see it?
Down and to the right.
Yeah. So it was fun.
Yep.
But honestly, the outline was a bit it's a bit hard.
Yeah.
Right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to soften the outline, and so instead of putting the mask directly on, I raised it up a bit. Obviously, the mask exposure isn't enough, but I'm looking at the softness of the shadow, and it's really not very soft at all. So maybe I need to look at a different way of softening the outline. Maybe I need to raise the mask quite a lot.
Could you? How long's your mask exposure for?
5 seconds or so. Oh, I know. See what you're talking about. You're talking about jiggling it.
Yeah, just moving it around.
Yeah. I mean, there are other ways of doing it. You see, I have.
Like if you lift the mask up, you've got to make the mask smaller, haven't you?
Yeah. That's actually not too challenging. If I was really serious about doing this for like a serious project, that's not too challenging. It's just a matter of scale. And light travels in straight lines. So all I need to do is work out proportionally how much higher or low I need to do it, and I can just make a smaller mask. And then I have a useful little gizmo, which is there's a glass plate like this, but it also has a piece of plastic to grip it and adjustable legs. Mm-hmm. So I can move a mask plate higher or lower if I wish, to give a softer
Yeah.
outline. Yeah, and I can also jiggle it if I wanted to.
I suppose the beauty of that a glass plate is you could do it under, you could position it under red light, couldn't you?
Yeah, which is what
So
I
you
did
could get
just now.
Oh right, just get it in exactly the right position.
Yeah. I'm kind of slowing down now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and just watch you work.
I'm just washing prints.
Washing's important.
Oh yeah. So what do you like? The prints that you make, like the one that you're working on now, are you just making it for personal pleasure, and like you might put it up in your house or whatever, or does it just sit in a box?
If I come up with good stuff, it'll go up. I did a whole bunch of more serious portraits for my son, and I did 2 sets. One I did a set for him. And the other set is sitting in the box, but I will take prints and I will frame them. So I actually have a whole bunch of frames that I can just chuck prints into. Yeah, and I'll hang them. Ironically, I tend to hang other people's work, as opposed to my own, and part of that is gratitude. And giving people some face when they, come to my darkroom, they see their things hanging up.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to print, even if you're not going to display, because we're not here forever, and certainly we're not going to be operating at the same quality level forever. And I think eventually you're going to look back and want to have prints from this time. And people are going to want to see what you did. And if you didn't print it, and all you got is negatives, and people look at negatives and go, oh, quaint, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even now, we're finding negatives for my family that date back more than 50 years. Pre-war negatives.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be that I can turn negatives into prints, or at least scan them. So I've been doing those, but if I wasn't around, then no one would do it. And I found the negatives, especially the loose negatives, have degraded a lot more than the prints of the day.
Are they black and white? They're black and white, or are they colour? Black and white.
Well, pre-war black and white negatives.
Oh right, yeah.
Some of them are odd sizes. They're not standard sizes either. So I think it's worth having prints. And if you look at my my boxes, like my even my Cuban stuff, or any projects I've done, even just the portraits. I have all the portraits from this set. Here we go. So I have all the portraits, prints of, spare prints. So if worst comes to the worst, and I lose my negatives, I've still got the prints. I had a nightmare situation once where I had 3 books of negatives, packed, all right, all 35mm stuff, and somehow they got wet. I don't know if it's a dripping air conditioner or whatever it was, but they got wet, and they stuck themselves to the inside of the negative sleeves. And I really honestly don't know how I'll ever get those out. There must be a way. I've kept them, but
Could you just put them in a bucket with water in it and just hope that they kind of separate?
Yeah, but it's like when if you put a print behind glass, sometimes the glass sticks to the gelatin,
Yeah.
right? And then how do you get it off? Because do you the plastic and the negative, how can you soak through all the way?
Maybe you're better off leaving it in it and printing with it stuck to it.
Yeah, but you've ruined them basically, right?
Yeah, they've gone.
I got 3 stuffed books of ruined negatives from that period.
Yeah, I've got a sleeve of negatives that they've got oil in them or something, and that's all stuck as well. It's horrible.
Yeah. So do print. I think printing is a nice backup. Also scanning, and I will have scans of everything though.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. I was chatting, Hamish from 35MNC. I had a chat with him a while ago about he throws his negatives away. He gets them scanned. He uploads them to Flickr. He's got them stored in the cloud, and then every 6 months or so, he just chucks all his negatives away.
Really?
Yeah, which I like. Personally, I think is crazy. No matter how far technology's come regards trusting a digital backup.
No, I mean I would never do that. The negatives for me are more important than the digital.
Yeah, they are to me as well. But
even his very favorite keepers, and he bins them.
I think he said he keeps some, but I don't know how he separates them off.
Does he?
I think because individual shots. I don't think he's going, oh yeah, I want to keep that whole roll or whatever. I think he just bins them all. It's crazy.
Oh. Yeah,
I know,
maybe there's a lot of test photography, photographs of walls and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he did say that actually, because he does a lot of camera tests, doesn't he? So I think a lot of it is very much just it works, it's fine, which I kind of get, but I don't think I even do that with my digital files. I don't go through and delete digital stuff because incrementally storage just gets cheaper and cheaper as the years go by, so I just end up backing everything up on following years.
And you end up with 8 different versions of the same or even identical files.
Yeah.
Because you've got one set that you copied from home onto work and one from work onto home, and then you got the copy of a backup, and
I've actually that's something I've been doing the last couple of months is trying to organise all my kind of digital archive of stuff. It's just a nightmare. I've got things spread over. I end up buying this bit of software that scans 2 different hard drives for duplicate files, not just based on file name, based on size and when it's created, all that sort of stuff, and that's helped a lot. But yeah, I've got so many duplicates of backed up files. Even on the same hard drive, I've got duplicates of stuff. It's stupid.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare.
That might actually save your bacon, because you end up deleting the wrong thing, and then you realize, oh well, I found it again here.
Yeah, I've got it somewhere else. That's the great thing about negative, though, isn't it? It's just you've got one copy of it. This is it. It exists like this.
I'll tell you what also works. Mothers. Yeah, mothers. So if you have a good photograph, you send it, especially family, you send it to your mother. She's always going to have that. She will never delete a good photograph of family. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So always send your mother the highest resolution scan that you have.
Or they'll end up just saving the thumbnail version of it in a tiny resolution.
I had a whole relationship that was nothing saucy, mine, but a whole relationship was photographed on a Fuji camera back in the late 90s, and in those days chips were expensive, and I'd photographed everything at medium resolution, which is something like 640 by 480. And I really regret that now. But you know, that was a horrible time when digital really wasn't better than film.
Oh, it was awful. Like, the only thing I enjoyed about it was the excitement that I recall having from having like a tiny camera, and it just kind of existed on your computer, and you could email it to people. I remember the excitement of that.
It skips all the faff in the middle, right? You don't need to develop it and scan it and get your CD and load the CD in the computer, and you know, you get straight digital.
In hindsight, looking at the quality of the images, like the technical, it's awful.
I know.
It's really bad. Is it Mayank? How do you say his name?
Mayank.
He's also said, "Can I also come to your darkroom, Dan?"
Yeah, absolutely. A long way away. I think we're at war right now.
Oh yeah, you had some shit go down, didn't you, on the border?
Yeah, but yeah, no, we'll always be mates, and yeah, you're always welcome. Come on over, come and stay at the darkroom if you want.
Nice. Nice.
No, it's a genuine offer. He's welcome to come out here if you know. But I think right now it's hard to travel. It was hard enough before, but you need to be quarantined for 14 days outside.
Right.
Yeah. And 14 days quarantine. If he's lucky, he would get to spend it in the darkroom, which means I couldn't get to the darkroom for 14 days. Right. And if he's unlucky, it's in a government hostel somewhere. Right, locked in a room.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's not good.
No.
Either way, it's probably safer than being in New Delhi right now.
Man. I was looking at the the global stats for the virus yesterday, and just thinking we've got so far to go before international travel becomes easy again.
Yeah.
It's a long journey ahead, I think.
Well, I think there's a long time to go before international travel becomes safe again.
Yeah.
Right. The only question is whether people decide that they're gonna just like live with a higher level of mortality these days. I don't like that, but eventually I think it's not just individual countries, but the world will get to a breaking point. You know, well, I just hope and pray that we get everything dealt with vaccine wise before the world gives up.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Ultimately, it's that's the only solution for longevity. But it's time, isn't it? You know, if you rush a vaccine
I don't
through.
have the answers because I'm not prepared to sacrifice my parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? So I just have to assume that people smarter than me are going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I was supposed to be right now. I was supposed to be in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had tickets that were booked, and I was supposed to be spending round about now is when the flights would have flown.
Right.
But that never happened, and that's quite right, because my family in the UK are high risk. They're all high risk.
Yeah.
So you know, even if Hong Kong is a lot safer than the UK, I would still be bringing an elevated risk of bringing something into the household.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's the right approach, isn't it? It's like it's a personal responsibility.
Yeah.
In your circumstances.
Yeah.
Like my partner's mum, we're allowed to bubble now with another household. So we've bubbled with my partner's mum, and it's kind of put me on edge now to think, well, hold on, if we're doing that, I've got to be extra careful because she's high risk. You know, it's like that then becomes our responsibility because we're spending more time with her.
Yeah. I mean, this is totally not about politics. It's about not being the guy who killed your friend's mum, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Yeah, it's. But at what point does everybody start to feel safe again? You know, it's a weird one.
I think that there's a bit of both. I think partly there's rationalization of real levels of risk.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the beginning of a pandemic, because it's all mysterious, and so, everyone's super duper careful just in case it's like the plague or something.
Yeah.
But you can't really become blasé about the risk.
And I guess that's the kind of what I've been reading about the science angle of it is when that happens, that's when you'll get a second wave because people aren't paying attention anymore. They're not thinking, oh, I've got to wear a mask, I've got to socially distance, do all those things, and people forget. And before you know it, it's everywhere again.
At least the UK numbers coming down.
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah, like everyone's so fit. Well, the people I speak to are very fearful of a second wave, simply because the last few weekends there's been huge numbers of like protests and like shops opened again on Monday. Like so, you've got people in close quarters, not wearing masks. Everyone kind of when you increase the numbers statistically, people are not able to social distance as well. So it becomes a numbers game, doesn't it? As soon as you've suddenly got thousands of people in one shop. And then you don't know for 2-3 weeks the impact of that. I think by the end of the month, middle of next month, if we can see a change in figures from what's happening now, then who knows? But personally, we're just like, right, well, we're fortunate enough that we can pretty much stay on lockdown, So, yeah, I don't know.
No universal solutions, so just take care of yourself and your family, yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
more
hopefully I'll see you
in time.
in a week or so.
Yeah, let me just wrap up the live. Yep. Oh, we've got some more messages. Hold on a second.
What's that?
Got some more messages come in. Oh, he's in quarantine already since the last 3 months.
Yeah, poor guy. Yeah. Well,
I look forward to downloading the app.
And Mayank, if you put the name in the comments, then people can find it on Google Play Store.
Oh yeah, do it.
Thanks, man.
And I can put a link in the comments afterwards as well. And,
wonderful.
Start sharing it out. Right, let's stop streaming. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.